We are good to start. I would suggest that we start the session. There might be still people coming in. But I believe we should start. So, welcome everybody. This afternoon session is a follow-up to the session we did earlier this morning. And it's really to talk about still access, but really focusing on the more concrete examples of realizing equal access for all. And we have a very interesting panel here today with us. So I will briefly introduce our panelists. Hello? How is my hearing? Okay. So I will briefly introduce our panelists before starting. And from the left here, we have Krasimir Simonsky from the Bulgarian ICT Agency, which is officially the executive agency for electronic communication networks and information systems. So the agency that is really implementing the broadband and accessibility strategy in Bulgaria. We have Rafael Ferraz Vasquez from WIPO, from the Copyright Law Division, who is focusing on access for disabled materials. We have Cristina de Castel from the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. And Cristina will talk about the role of libraries in enabling access. And last but not least, we have Sébastien Bachelet from France, representing ISOC France, and also is engaged in various other efforts and organizations in France. And Sébastien will talk a bit about the French example of how France has enabled access, or the projects that are being carried out to enable access for all groups. So what I'd like to do is I would like everybody to give a 5-minute statement simply to bring your views and your point of view. And then we will engage the audience and take questions and continue the discussion. So, Krasimir, would you like to continue?
Thank you. Well, the topic is specified the role of the government and actually steps to realizing equal access of all. It's a pretty wide topic. I mean, I don't think it's not that strange to have it in at least 3 sessions and being touched as a topic in several other presentations here. I can talk about what Bulgarian government is doing for the country in the areas actually where we have kind of not equal access or difficulties, or you have barriers. And well, with this, I would like to mention briefly a characteristic of the country from the at least European statistics. Bulgaria, although being among the first countries in good internet in big cities, for instance, the capital of Sofia is among the first 10 cities worldwide of having good internet. That's a complex index. At the same time, Bulgaria ranked last in broadband penetration. And the reason for this is actually rural areas. And although 70% of the population live in towns, there is big concentration, urbanization of the country, the rest 30% actually live in rural areas, and access to those rural areas, broadband coverage is not that good. And actually that kind of points to the first problem we have here, the investment barrier. And we're talking for areas where the investment usually is not returned, or there is so-called twilight zone, I can call it, an area where either return of investment is negative, or there is potential for sustainability, but the investment barrier is high to return the investment. And this is what I call twilight zone. And actually, we just started a project which is referred to as Bulgarian NGA Broadband Project. And this project actually targets exactly those areas, this twilight zone, where you still have business incentives, but if you invest, you cannot return the initial investment. With our approach, We intend to build the so-called middle mile between the big city and municipality centers in our case, and this solves this problem of this initial investment. Then it will be granted to an operator, and this operator is going to rent the infrastructure, and we believe, and according to our research, our business plan, that this operator can make profit, or this could be sustainable. More or less this approach that we've seen in all over Europe, where we're not unique in this approach, unique in terms of specifics of the country. But I think that's worthwhile sharing and understanding as a model, because it has other benefits which are also worth mentioning. For instance, there is, in those areas, there is demand that's still latent demand, and people still don't realize what benefits those services can bring to them. And that's why in our project we actually have dual purpose. And dual purpose is that we connect the public institutions, we stimulate e-government services, and this way we kind of promote the benefits of being connected. And being connected at high speed, not just being connected, because for Bulgaria, more or less, this is not that much an issue. Meaning that the mobile internet covers now 97% of the territory of the country. Bulgaria is actually first among the good countries in mobile internet penetration because of that, etc., etc. But when we talk about NGA coverage, which is, I think, the ultimate goal for the next years, then we don't score good in the rural areas. But anyway, stimulating demand through e-government services is something that's worth exploring a little more, because people are realizing they need this kind of connectivity, then that could be easily converted into business incentive for the internet service providers, etc., etc. So that's just marking this project, and I think it's pretty good ground to understand the situation in rural areas as we did from this perspective. And the government vision and the discussion on twilight zone is also interesting, because this is where government and business actually meet. And this is the zone where you have to solve the, if we can talk about conflicts between government or social part of coverage with the business part, because sooner or later you have to go to sustainability. And it's demand versus supply, another issue. I can mention about other projects that we started and implemented here in the country to mostly stimulate demand. And 10 years ago it was even not just stimulating, it was even demonstrating a step before stimulating the demand. That's the project telecenters that we started. We started 2004, this project, successful implementations of a network of telecenters. We had almost 120 telecenters in the country. And through this network, we actually succeeded to implement several other projects which were relevant to that. For instance, we trained all state administration in the country, 65,000 people in 1 year, to reach the first level of IT skills. And it happened through those telecenters who were close to those people. They're actually in their towns. Based on the network of telecenters, we could expand to cover all municipality centers, etc. So absolute positive impact of having such kind of projects. Of course, through the years, I mean, those projects, they have their specifics. I was project manager of this project, so I know everything in details. And one of the things to understand is that such kind of projects, they have their life cycle. And because of expiration of the cycle, they usually go in decline, which in most of the cases is understood as it doesn't work, the idea doesn't work, which is not so. In our case, actually, we had a very good transition from this project telecenters to another project called Global Libraries. Out of 120 telecenters that we have, the next network was 900 community centers community libraries organized in a similar network. Telecenters were providing local services, access to some of the government services, e-business services, just reading information. We're talking about very small settlements where those kind of services require assistance. If we're talking, for instance, adult people who want to read the local newspaper from the regional town, or read other news, etc., those kind of services. And that's a serious contribution to this society because it keeps it open. I would say feel connected. So projects like telecenters make sense, absolute sense, especially in rural areas, to demonstrate the benefits of being connected, to also stimulate the demand, because you work close with all those people. Right now we're still not abandoning the idea, and based on the global libraries, and based on our e-government aspirations to develop the government cloud and develop e-government infrastructure, which is also part of the agency duties, we also think to use probably the postal office as place where you can convert, I called it real virtuality rather than virtual reality. Meaning you go there, you see a real person, you go and see a real system right there, but it helps you go to the virtual world. So it's real, although it's the virtual world behind that. And we're seriously thinking to use such kind of networks actually to expand the coverage of the government services. Associated with this, I can mention several other projects like iClass, having computers in all schools, connecting all schools to internet, which has its next version now with the next generation access, now having with multimedia, rather than just being connected, etc. And having the e-government cloud, having the educational cloud, along with national security, for instance, and providing the access capacity, which is unlimited in case of next generation access infrastructure, because we all know optical technologies, they are unlimited in speeds and what you can achieve at as capacity. And there is always excess capacity. And in our case, what's available after being used for the government purposes is left to the local internet business to utilize and actually develop their own business there. That's another benefit, I would say. And well, you said 5 minutes.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Krasimir, for the introduction. Let's pass the floor to Rafael, please.
Yes, I want to talk a little bit about the Marrakesh Treaty, which may not seem related to any of the topics in this conference, but the Marrakesh Treaty is also about accessibility and human rights, on the human right of access to culture, to provide access to materials that in many countries are not accessible for a part of the population, that is the visually impaired and print-disabled people. The member states of the WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, decided to enter in this international instrument for one really simple reason. They look at the numbers that in the world there are 285 million visually impaired people, and that for that population, most of the books that we have access nowadays, for example, a magazine or a book or educational book, were not accessible for that population. It means to say that in our study from 2006, only from 1 to 7% of every material available in printed form, also electronic form, were not available for that population. And that took into account, for example, material in English, which is a main language. But if we go to less represented languages, for example, Bulgarian, that number will be even lower. So taking all those data into account, the member state decided to enter in the Marrakesh Treaty, which simply creates a limitation exception to allow the creation and exchange cross-border of accessible formats of works. What do I mean by accessible formats? I mean formats that are accessible for people with visual impairment. It can be Braille format, but also digital books, e-books, such as the EPUB or the DAISY book that we saw in the session this morning. So with this treaty, when all the countries ratify, or at least 20 countries ratify, blind association or libraries will be able to create accessible formats of a book. For example, someone wants to read Harry Potter in Braille version. So they will be able to create the Harry Potter version or import from one country that has already created this format. And this way have a higher number of works accessible for that population.
Thank you, Rafael. Christina,
yes.
what do the libraries, how do the libraries help equal access for all?
So we've talked a little bit already about the role of libraries in providing access to technology, and the Global Libraries Project, supported by the Bulgarian government and the Gates Foundation, is certainly an important part of ensuring equal access to rural communities, particularly, and recognizes that technology alone is not a solution, and that we also need people who can facilitate the access, who can teach the skills for finding information and for evaluating information. And so this model of putting computers and internet access in libraries, in post offices, in places where people can get assistance with their information needs and with accessing government services is an important way that libraries facilitate equal access. I'd like to also talk a little bit about the Marrakesh Treaty and what it means for individuals and how it will work for libraries. So libraries have been quite involved in the process for the Marrakesh Treaty because, as Rafael mentioned, only about 5%, 1 to 7% of books are available in accessible formats. And what this means is that if someone with a visual impairment or with dyslexia, someone who can't physically hold a book, comes to a library and wants to read something, the library or the organization that serves that population can choose to convert the book to an accessible format, or now get an already converted book from another country. And when you're working only in English, this is not such a large problem. There tends to be a lot of material available in English-speaking countries, but where we see this really matters is where we have refugee or immigrant populations who are not the major language group of an area. And this treaty will mean that once it's ratified, when a library or an organization is serving someone who speaks a language that isn't the language of that country, they can get the home language material from the country where it came from. This makes a big difference because the cost to convert material from the traditional format to a digital format to Braille can be as much as $1,500 US just to do that conversion. So obviously a library or an organization serving the blind is not able to afford to convert everything that someone might want to read. E-books are making a big difference in this area, but they are not actually accessible formats inherently in the standard that we're using right now, which is EPUB 2. So as we move to the EPUB 3 standard, there are more opportunities available for making the material accessible in its native state. So at the first creation of the EPUB 3 document, that it has more indexing. Some of the references made this morning that the table of content exists, that people can move back and forth in the document and experience it the way that a print user with visual ability uses that document, so that you can leaf through it and move from section to section. So these are important characteristics of the EPUB 3 format and something that DAISY has offered for accessible formats. So we have some new technology standards that are going to make a lot of this much easier. The other thing that libraries are doing along with other organizations that serve these audiences is banding together to create a database supported by WAPO called TIGER? Yeah, ABC, so the name, the Accessible Books Consortium, and then the TIGER network of putting the materials that are available in every country together into one repository so that people know what has already been converted and can provide easier and faster access. This makes a big difference because when you have a student, for example, who wants to take a course in a college or university, they may never have been asked, the college or university, for the textbook in accessible format before. And the time and the cost of clearing the copyright can mean that that student can't take that course at the time that they want to. So being able to access works that have already been converted in another country, in another language, will make a real difference to access to content.
Thank you, Christina. Sebastian, what have you been doing in France to enable access, please?
Thank you very much. I would like to speak about 3 projects in France. The first one, it's, and I am involved more or less in all those 3, but the first one, it's one launched by OP3FT. It's an organization whose purpose is to all promote, protect, and ensure the progress of the frog-end technology. Maybe it's the first time you heard about that, and I will give you a very short explanation of what it is. It's a new tool on internet. Its aim is to have something at the same level as you have today, web, mail, and other application. And this tool will allow you to publish with a light and easy-to-use solution. It's a new technology using short and simple naming, who support language set from all around the world since the beginning, and easy to identify through an asterisk. It will, the naming will be on the form of network name, asterisk site name. And it seems to be very promising technology, very light, and that will allow better access or usage with low bandwidth and with a real multilingual system. Second project or organization, it's named eSeniors. It's an organization who help the seniors to learn to be more digitalized. It's to learn how to use your phone, your tablet, your computer, and how to use application on it. What is interesting is that they start to teach to seniors, and now they are used by a lot of projects at the European level as a group to test. And they become a test group for a new project on e-health for seniors and how they use the technology for when they are questioned about illness or about how to access internet. And it's a really very interesting organization. The third one, it's one you may know, it's AFNIC, who runs the .fr. We, as I am board member of AFNIC, we launch a foundation to support projects in the field of solidarity using internet. And we will use all the benefit from the .fr, put this money aside in the foundation and use this money to help project within France to better use the internet. That's the 3 projects I wanted to talk about now, and if I will be able to come back, I will tell you a bit about what's happened in the French IGF 2 days ago around this topic. Thank you.
Can you please repeat the name of the technology with the name asterisk?
Frogans, F-R-O-G-A-N-S.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sebastian. Krasimir, do you have a comment?
Yes, I just want to add something to what we've heard about the blind people, because I had a project to train blind people, and just out of experience, it's really emotional when you train such kind of people with disabilities, etc. And we were very afraid in the beginning how it's going to work, and in the beginning it was really hard. But after, let's say, 4th or 5th session in training, those people turned now overcoming the barrier of the interface of the computer, now being able to communicate with the computer, they went rocket high, I mean really fast and really effective. And that turned us to think about talking to those people that disability may turn into an advantage, because they have been cut of one of seeing, actually. They have another benefit, which is you have great concentration. And those people demonstrated that during the training in the rest of this training. And we achieved amazing results. And those people believed that being not able to see, actually they have even more advantages because of that. And in computers, you know what concentration means. We just discussed about watching what's going on, etc., and being distracted, etc. I don't have this. Okay, so it was really emotional success, and we were very happy to see this works with those people. And along with this, I also want to mention another group of people, minority, and the role of internet technology to integrate those people. We've been through such trainings to involvement of such people, and through internet technologies, actually it works. And we have a lot of issues with minority people, especially Roma minority people, etc. And through those courses, being in internet, I still remember one cartoon in early the internet where two dogs talking to each other, and they said, nobody knows you're a dog in internet. Something like we're all equal there. And bringing all those people, groups that are segregated to internet, actually integrates them into the societies, because for me, internet is the best integrator of the society. Just wanted to mention this emotion.
Excellent, excellent points, Krasimir. I would like to involve the audience now, just to get the discussion, to get some questions to the panelists from your perspective, from your communities. Do we have any questions at this stage? I can bring a microphone. Anybody?
Can I also ask a question?
I have also questions. Please, Krasimir, continue.
From the government perspective, or I don't know, maybe professional perspective out of this, because I'm in the government just for 2 years. Before that, I was on the other side, this including the business. What I found as the most serious issue in such kind of projects is the balance between social and business. Because to become sustainable, you have to go to the business side. You have to find some business incentives. You have to find some motivation for this to continue. Okay? And on the other side, all we're talking here is social, and the issues that we are addressing, covering the rural areas, involving people with disabilities, integrating minorities, etc. It's all fall into the social part of the things. And the question would be, what should be the balance? What should be the magic formula to combine this?
Maybe, Sebastian, you mentioned the eSenior project. I think this is a very exciting and relevant experiment, because Europe, of course, is an aging society, aging population. And, we already said, I think, in the previous session that many of the people above 70 are amongst those who don't really feel comfortable on the internet, etc. So going back to Krasimir's point there, how was this project funded, the eSenior project in France? Who was behind it? Was it government promoted? Was it a social, civil society initiative? Do you have plans to commercialize, or how do you plan to keep it going in the long run?
Thank you for the question. I really think we don't need to commercialize something to do good things for the people, and we need money. That's a point. But we are running under a non-for-profit organization, and the money is coming from project, and we get project either from local authority or for the European project if we participate to one. Now it's a little bit easier to get funding, as we are see as an organization who can test what it's proposed, and I guess both the people who want to push a project and the Europe needs to have this feedback prior to launch it in a bigger group, and it's where we find the money, and I hope that we will still be able to have a lot of non-for-profit organizations who run things for people in the future. Thank you.
And from Casimir, your point of view, I mean, as the government representative in this, how do you think that government can best promote, you know, the access? We discussed a bit the rural areas where I think the government role can be quite clear in terms of, you know, state aid, state-funded projects, etc. Perhaps some regulatory changes. But in the areas where we start addressing separate communities, whether it's the seniors or disabled materials, is this part of your government, let's say, program? Do you somehow proactively address this?
Yeah, I think we come to the point asking about the role of the government, you know, this is because talking about the social role, at least from investment part of that, as a government. I mean, who else is going to invest in this other than philanthropists or funding organizations, etc. So the government should play this role. And it should first understand the role of internet, the role of technology for achieving social goals, and in this case, behave as social entrepreneur. Because at the end, this brings development for some of the areas. If there is any business potential, that kind of reveals this potential, etc., etc. But it's much more complex. It's not that easy, you know, because first, I do it on purpose, social and business, compare this, because, as I mentioned, there is some twilight zone where it's just one investment that may bring this sustainability. And if you can recognize such opportunity, I think this should be probably one of the first priorities, because it's dual purpose. First, you achieve your social goals, at the same time you help the business development, and so on, and then it goes in a spiral, kind of becomes sustainable and goes to the next stage, etc. And I think this should be put priority, and this is what we do with our project. We deliberately actually focus on this twilight zone, where there is business potential, where there is opportunity to kind of transfer the government role to the business, if that's possible, because, I mean, if that happens, then it goes on its own. Same in the big cities with the internet. It works because there is business incentive, and when business is already there and sustainable, there is no need for the government to be there. Maybe regulation, maybe something like that. So that's one point. And the other, I mean, the government is supposed to go beyond the business potential. I mean, equal access means equal access for all, even in the areas where there is no business potential, etc. But we have to take care of this, because it becomes a social problem, a sharp social problem, etc. So the role of the government here as investment provider is one thing, but it's also about taking the right decision, where, how, and all those things. And then it's become really complex. And at the end, I think there should be this thinking of converting social values into business values somehow, to try to express the social impact you achieve into the business categories. And that helps to recognize whether those are real or those are just for the purpose of planning. That's why it's becoming real challenge, because using business categories in social area, that's really, I don't know how many of you are doing this, but I think that's probably the best approach, trying to kind of compare oranges with the apple through the juice. You can mix the juice, you cannot mix that. You can mix the juice of that, you can mix the results of that. And you raise them in the same way. You need sun, you need water for the orange and the apple, and almost the same. That's areas. So that's my kind of view on the social versus business, etc. And for what the government can do, I have some things other than investment opportunity, social funding, universal access, and regulations. Regulations is something that help. I mean, you can easily combine some business incentive areas with other disadvantaged areas, something we also do. For instance, to the operator who will grant the infrastructure to be operated, we kind of force them to have profitable areas, but at the same time we oblige them to have social areas. So kind of use the profit on one place to invest in the other. And then still more, I don't want to talk about it here, but most of the things I'm saying actually assume as challenges to comment. It's about another feature that we see in the modern information society. And it's about people going where the living conditions are good, and they actually bring business with them. They don't go where the business conditions are best. Well, they still go, and they'll continue to go. But I mean, now we see the first pioneers, the first adopters who actually go to a small village just because the life is great there. Suburban life and so on and so on. We see this even in a country like Bulgaria. We have people living 20 kilometers from the capital, traveling every day, commuting to work, or working from home. So they go to small villages, and number one condition, especially for working people, is to have good internet access. Just mobile is not enough for most of them. And just providing such conditions, internet, for combine it with the good living conditions in good areas, mountain areas, etc., I think will stimulate people to go there and actually kind of bring their people where their life is. It's also worth thinking, and a lot of stipulations on that could be done. But it's worth thinking about such global trends that are fact now.
Yes, thank you. I think we have a question in the audience. Could I just steal your mic? Thanks.
Oh, it's not much of a question, it's more like a story. There's this German village in North Germany. They have internet, but the internet is very slow, like in Bulgaria in many villages. And so what they did is they found their own ISP internet service provider, and they gathered about 900 euros each member of the village. They found their own company, and now they have fiber internet, which is much, much faster. And so my point is, if we are able to raise the standard of living, because people will form together and there'll be a business opportunity for them, and they will solve their own problems. Because if you go in a village today in Bulgaria and ask each resident to give you 900 euros each, they'll say, come back in 20 years. And so that's what I think about it. That raising the whole level should be also a priority, not only focus on the access, but focus on the economic growth.
You're exactly talking about the twilight zone, because once you have this investment, then it becomes sustainable. It has business incentive because you can bring business. Some of those people may be developing digital content. You may see authors, you may see famous people living there and working from there. I used to be like that. I worked from my home, and I could go anywhere just with my bag and internet access. Could be anywhere. If the conditions in this village are excellent for living, I'll go there if I can do the job from there. And,
digital nomad.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Do we have further questions from the audience? George, please.
Yes, thank you. A question maybe for Krasimir, like he represents the government here in Bulgaria. About the telecenters, I could tell you that the reality in Portugal, where we name the telecenters like internet spaces, in the internet spaces we have almost 60% of them with assistive technologies to people with disabilities. I'd like to know if telecenters also have some assistive technologies to people with disabilities. And for the content that the public administration put online, for example, Portugal adopt the international web accessibility guidelines since 1999. So we have almost 15 years of experience running the accessibility guidelines in public administration. I'd like to know if in Bulgaria you have already some task in this area. And also to Rafael, I'd like to know if when the Marrakesh Treaty goes on, if they have any impact in the publishers. So we have, like you said, maybe 5% of the books in an accessible format in nowadays. Producing an accessible book is very expensive, like Christina said, and the users, I know that the users dream with the possibility of go to a library and buy a book and read the book in a special format already made in the origin of the producing. This is a dream, or Marrakesh Treaty could, in fact, push the publishers to make more accessible books. Thank you.
Thank you. Panelists, please, who will start?
Government first. First, I should say that there is difference from a government to government, and even inside government. I mean, government is like a country itself, with so many departments, etc., even people with different understanding, different level, etc. So when we say government, we should be careful. So it's really very, very strong to say I represent the government, but yeah, in this panel, I'm the one from the government. First, let me share that we learned from the experience you had in Portugal about developing networks of telecenters. So we use some of your experience. Talk about disability options and having special devices, etc. Other than special software, unfortunately, we did not invest in more than that. Access, etc. Okay, but I mean, special tools, no at that moment, because I mean, I'll say that we try to capture as many as possible first visitors over there, and to be fair, people with disabilities were not among them as enthusiasm. Sorry to say that, but well, kind of measuring the impact of having the telecenters, we mostly focus on demonstrating the benefits of the information society. And again, this is unfortunate because, as I told my experience with training blind people, it turned out to be probably good investment for bringing these people back to the business, back to the society. I think it's worth all this. And after that, we actually invested in some software, invested in a printer in one of the telecenters where we had a school for blind people, actually, and went into collaboration with them to use their facilities for the purpose, etc., but not as the same level as you did in Portugal. And it's worth the investment again. The other one, the web access, not as in your country. We still owe to those people, owe a lot.
On the impact of the Marrakesh and the publishers, I think not only the Marrakesh called the attention to the need to provide access to formats that are accessible, but also there's a whole set of environments that helped publishers to become aware of the need. For example, the United Nations Convention for Persons with Disability, and as well the new technologies that facilitated publishers as well to create accessible formats easier and in a cheaper way. So what was really complex and difficult to create an accessible format 5 years ago, now the publisher could make what we call born accessible formats with almost no cost for them. So I think that in the near future, we're going to see more and more accessible formats books for sale on regular retail stores, online stores, and also on libraries. I believe it's more common. And also on publishers, they are also part of the Accessible Books Consortium that Christina mentioned. And they developed together with ABC and the other partners of ABC, like IFLA, a charter of good practices for accessible publishing. So there we have a series of principles that the publishers agree to follow to create accessible formats from the beginning, when they create a book and they make accessible. It may seem a little futuristic, but it's not. You have major publishers that are already adhered to this charter. For example, Elsevier and Perkins International are two major publishers that have already accepted this charter of accessible, born accessible books. I don't know if Christina wants to add.
Yeah, I wanted to contribute that this is an area where libraries and publishers are trying to work together, because although many of the multinational publishers are aware of the opportunities in the new technology standards, in the new formats like EPUB 3, smaller publishers do not tend to be as aware of the opportunities that are out there. And so by individuals who are speaking with publishers or working in the book industry, by libraries talking to the publishers and distributors they buy from, we can increase the awareness of publishers that there are better ways to publish digital books that make them accessible from the outset. And I think that that's quite important, is to raise that awareness with the small publishers that are in each of our countries and operating independently, because we do have much greater awareness at the level of the Elsevier or the multinational commercial publishers. What's important, I think, with accessible formats is that on the whole, when I've spoken to publishers, they are not threatened by the idea of libraries or organizations breaking technical protection measures for this specific purpose. And since we have had so many challenges in this area in working with other industries, the fact that this doesn't seem to be quite as contentious an area is positive from a library perspective, that the idea of a circumvention of a technical protection measure for the purpose of making something available in accessible format, as long as it's ensured that it won't be redistributed to a non-authorized entity, that is permitted and is appropriate.
Thank you, panelists. Another question. Technical remark, thank you.
So making a book accessible can be also achieved by making the book more semantic, more machine readable, and can have other benefits. And when the content is already licensed in some form, this might be a problem, but for content that's free and open, like open access articles or books or whatever, it's very important to take advantage of that, because all this content is digitized, being marked up and all that, and all this effort can be used to create accessible content even easier. As you mentioned, table of contents, references, cross-reference, being able to jump search and all that.
Yeah, the metadata behind EPUB 3 is far, far better than previous standards. So we're all better off if publishers begin to publish using the new standards and marking up at the level that an accessible format requires, because it means that the entire publication is more available to everyone.
Yeah,
so
much more interactive.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Do we have any more questions in the audience at this stage?
No, also, just to follow up, when he mentioned that book that is open data is also easier, but in some cases, for example, educational books, even if the book is accessible and you don't need to clear the rights of copyright, you still, in some cases, need to make it accessible. For example, to describe the formulas or the images for people with disability. So it's not always as simple as take a book that you don't have to clear the rights and just give them a news screen-to-speech book or audio book. It has also some enhancements to facilitate, to navigate, and to access the.
Thank you, Rafael. We have another question here in the audience.
Thanks very much. Henriette Esterhuizen from APC. So just about EPUB 3, is this something that would then be accessible to all publishers of non-commercial institutional publishers of online books? I'm speaking, we're a civil society organization and we actually publish quite a lot online. And would that be easy accessible? Are there costs involved? And are you the open and access community planning to reach out to distribute this information? We've been involved in open licensing and Creative Commons, and I know one of our greatest struggles has been convincing publishers of content to understand open licensing and knowing about it. They often, sometimes it's a business model objection, but sometimes they just don't know that it's there for them to use open licensing. And do you find that that barrier also exists with using accessible online publishing formats?
Thank you.
So EPUB 3 is an open standard. So it's absolutely available to any publisher to learn about that. And there's information about how to make sure that the EPUB 3 format is accessible on the Accessible Books Consortium website. So you can direct people to that, as well as to extensive information about EPUB 3, which has many similarities actually to the W3C accessible guidelines for websites and marking up websites. So if we think of what we know in marking up a website, of tagging your images, describing anything that's a table in a narrative format, that's the common ground between describing a website in an accessible way and describing a book in an accessible way. So yes, it's an open standard and everyone can absolutely use it.
And on the question about open licenses, I believe some publishers that have their own open license in some case, because if you see Creative Commons, it's simply one type of license that can be another open license that's not necessarily Creative Commons. So what I usually hear from publishers, unfortunately we don't have a publisher here to speak by themselves, but is that they are of course concerned with their businesses. But on accessible formats for print disabled and blind people, also on the Accessible Book Consortium, they have been collaborating, and on the Tiger database that Christina mentioned, since 2014, for example, we cleared the rights of 12,000 books. So in 12,000 occasions, they clear the rights to and allowed an accessible format to be distributed to visually impaired people. So they are collaborated, but of course they are always concerned about their business.
Thank you. Did that answer your questions? I think so. You had another comment, please?
I just wanted to say that even for images, it's useful to everyone to have the image marked up with the text attribute. It helps for searching, finding the image. It also helps in a low bandwidth situation when you have a matter connection, say roaming, then you say to the browser, turn off images. And then it's very useful to have a text. So I think this effort is worthwhile, should be made in the future as much as possible.
Thank you. Another question. There you go.
Last question, more for comment. I mean, I worked on. I did my internship on EPUB as a standard, just looking at and how to use them for publishers, and it's been mostly used for books because back with EPUB 2 and before, it did not support displaying like technical information, like sort of equations and stuff. But now with EPUB 3, you can do that. So I think maybe there should be more raising awareness of these new features so that more different forms of publishers can also take on EPUB as a format.
Well, actually, last week I heard for the International Publishers Association that they are adopting EPUB 3 as the standard, as the publishing standard, exactly for that reason. So probably EPUB 3 will be more and more common among publishers.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? Not at this stage. I wanted to, at this stage, we talked quite a lot about the specifics of the various projects that you have been conducting, which is great. And I think it was Krasimir who mentioned about the impact. So we are here talking about, you know, good practices towards equal access for all. And I wanted to just have a quick round on these projects that you've been working on. Some of them are older, like the telecenters. You've already had years of experience. Others might be more on the piloting level. Others are based on a treaty, you know, an agreement between a group of countries. How do you measure impact? Have you actually seen a concrete improvement in the access levels based on your projects? And if it's still at the piloting stages, how do you, or are you imagining how could these projects and efforts be scaled? And I'm here talking, we're here at the EuroDIG, we have many countries here, and I think many of the initiatives are very exciting. So it would be also interesting to see, you know, how to scale them and potentially also replicate in other countries. Krasimir, would you like to start?
Well, I commented this part of the projects, and projects by project, they're all different. And there is no magic formula to measure impact, at least with one index, composite index or whatever. Just like let's look at the composite index that the European Union is using to measure the information society and see how it works. And then if you want to apply this index or decompose this index into some categories to measure impact of different projects, that's really difficult. It's quite an issue now, especially in utilizing European funds in countries like Bulgaria, for instance, on what indicators you have for each project. Each scheme is trying to be creative, it's different, etc. It depends on the specific of the projects, etc. But my personal opinion is that you should look for this business measure into social projects. And we tried this. We tried to convert our social contribution of those projects into business indicators. It's really difficult, but it worked for some of them. It worked for some of them because, again, I mean, if you think business-like in those projects, and I think this is how you should approach solving even social issues, thinking about sustainability in all those projects, it's worthwhile thinking about having this. It's just an opinion. Project by project, I mean, you have many indicators, number of telecenters, number of users, numbers of visitors, etc., etc. But that's what's important, sustainability in all this, and actually bringing more development opportunities for, in this specific case, equal access.
Okay, thank you. Rafael, Bob?
Well,
Just go.
yes, sorry, I stole the microphone. So for WIPO, the Marrakesh Treaty is a project in itself, but even though we already have a treaty, now we are on the phase of developing two types of activities. The first one covering the legal aspects of the treaty, that is assisting member states to implement the treaty in the national corporate laws and how to implement the different options. And the second one is on the practical level of activities, is through the ABC to do capacity building in countries. For example, they already undertook capacity building in Bangladesh, where they created 1,300 accessible books for schools. And as well to teach and assist, partnering with other organizations like the World Blind Union, to provide training on how to make accessible books, because in many countries you don't have the technical expertise to create those books, or after creating, how to exchange through the internet or through digital means this book with other countries when the treaty is ratified in those countries. So this is a main project that the WIPO is developing.
To follow on the Marrakesh Treaty, because it's not at an implementation phase, it doesn't have, for the libraries that are implementing, indicators yet, but some of the things that an individual library or library in a national library association might look at would be the number of accessible books that were available as the baseline when this project started, when the treaty is implemented in the country, compared to over a period of time. And I think another thing that would be interesting to look at would be the percentage of accessible format books that are created initially. So are they natively created accessible? And through raising awareness with publishers of the Marrakesh Treaty, that perhaps we increase the number of natively accessible books. So a couple of possibilities. It's the area of indicators and metrics in libraries is something that's always under discussion, and so we're always adding more.
Sure.
Thank you. I already talked to you about e-senior. Of course, one of the parameters is the number of people who are trained, but what is important also is how many people participate in further projects and become testers, that become involved in European projects and so on. And that's a very good way to measure. I would like to take 2 or 3 examples that was discussed at the French IGF to answer your question. It's, for example, solidarity. It's a potential of digital who allow to express themselves through education and training concept. And we had different projects explained. One is named Web for 3, show how digital could help reduce the social divide, first by creating job and training about 100 young people less than a year from them to find employment or return to school for higher education. And digital, it's also an impact who must multiply for educational strategy. And of course, one of the main examples is MOOC, and there were some examples in high school, engineer high school in north of France, but also some project of MOOC done by the organization of, what is in English? Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, organization of the Francophonie at the international level. That's some example. I can talk even more, but that's, I would like to have
more feedback from the audience.
Discussion.
Exactly.
Yes, if it's possible.
Audience, any comments? Questions, George? Okay. And do we have anything online? No.
Just a clarification about a statement that I take note of Sebastian. I think he said that the .fr invest the results of the selling domains on projects to better use the internet. Is correct? Or
yes, the benefit of the .fr, part of the benefits, it's 90%, but it's a huge amount.
Do you know if any kind of these projects are about digital literacy? And
you know, for the moment we set up the foundation, and the foundation will, or is getting now the money, and we'll launch a request for proposal, and depending of the project this foundation will receive, the money will go to those projects. That for the moment, it's yes, there is nothing yet done. It's starting this year.
Okay. Seems me a good idea that the others .fr, .pt, so on and so on could also make this kind of approach, I think.
Very good. Any other comments? Questions? No? I wanted to explore a bit the we talked about a bit the role of the government, potential business angles, and I'm here from the Internet Society, is the civil society, the local users. Typically, we in our organization, when we talk about the internet development, we always think about the bottom-up approach. How can the local community impact the internet development, be part of it, participate in this development? And I just wanted to understand how you in your projects have included and involved the local community. And is there a possibility, for example, with government, for end-user individuals to participate and have a say in the broadband development? Is there a possibility for that?
Local government, important player. And kind of for the projects that I mentioned, they couldn't happen without the support of the local government. Of course, there is another complication bringing local government, meaning that you have to spend efforts to convince this local government what the benefits for their societies. Sometimes there is, you have to invest a lot of time to convince them what it's for them. And sometimes you meet the local interests if you want. For instance, right now we are developing optical infrastructure, and it goes through the construction law, and the local government has their position for this and their role. And sometimes it takes a lot of time and a lot of troubles actually to get construction permission, which comes from them, even though at political level it's agreed. There is still, some small things that do not allow this to happen. So first importance of involving local government, I think, is very high. Such projects without local governments and social part and actually concerning the local community should happen with their participation. High involvement, as high as possible, even if they could lead. If you can allow them to lead, that's also something that has to be a goal. But their role is crucial.
And what about then, we talked about the supply and demand. So you, of course, are the executional agency to provide supply of the internet and build out the infrastructure. And then we discussed the demand side. So there has to be people with skills and interests who will actually then pay for the internet services. And it's, of course, very important to consult even these people in the process of building the supply to understand what are their requirements, how can you perhaps promote the local content creation, etc. Has the government, do you have any programs on that? Do you focus on the demand side promotion at all? Or is it mainly from the supply side at this stage?
Absolutely. I mean, our understanding is that there is latent demand that first have to be awakened. Actually, at some extent, you have to develop the demand. People don't know about the services. They don't know what benefits that they may have, what content they can access, what it can do for them. But sometimes we are witnessing a lot of examples when the service comes with the application, for instance, and actually an application develops the demand. And almost the same model should apply to such kind of projects. I mean, you really have to think of developing the demand for those services. Most of them are not well understood. For instance, you have to go to the local hospital and tell them what remote medicine approach can do for them, and even demonstrate this. And they don't realize that. Some of them have heard about operations over distance, this kind of things. But until you implement something, or at least you demonstrate, develop, if you want, mock-up of the service, it doesn't work. So it's issue not only about showing them what's available, it's about thinking how to develop this for them, how to develop this demand. And in our case, we work through e-government services. So bringing e-government services, stimulating e-government services, stimulating local government to develop and provide those services is actually one of the approaches to stimulate the demand. Yeah, okay. Thank you for bringing this.
And maybe from France, because I know that France has a great citizen activity revolutionary tradition. So, and as far as I understood, Sebastian, your projects were to large extent also driven by local community and civil society. So maybe you would like to share some insights on how these projects have been driven as opposed to the kind of government-led projects or business-led projects.
Yeah, I think when it starts from the citizen, it's stay with the citizen, but we try to involve private sector and government, and mainly because when we are end user, we don't have finance, and if we want to have bigger project, we need to find some money. But the reverse, it's not always true. We don't have when you have project like what I can say without trouble with my diplomacies, but just imagine when you launch a new GTLD. The proposition came from citizen, and then the organization, governmental organization, takes the project and say, okay, it's my job, and I don't want you anymore to be involved. And at the end of the day, the citizens are not anymore involved. And we don't need just to struggle about multi-stakeholder for internet governance. We need to struggle for multi-stakeholder in projects. Multi-stakeholder must not be just something we say, okay, yes, it's okay to discuss, but when we are in the project, we need to be involved. And it's important, for example, for the geo-TLD, the regional TLD, the city TLD. Unfortunately, it was not a request from the guidebook, and it could have been a very interesting request to be sure that the local community, the local community is involved. It's really something we need to be very careful about. It's how we get the citizen involved. Not because if we start from the internet governance to go to internet project, hopefully it will go to other projects, and maybe it will go to governance of other scarce resources like water, air, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Christina, would you like to comment from your library's point of view?
Sure, and I think that probably Raphael could talk about how the
Yes.
how the Marrakesh Treaty came about, because it, I think, was
Yes.
a bit citizen-led.
Yeah.
So the way that the IFLA works, the International Federation of Library Associations, is made up of, at the front line, libraries who belong to national library associations, who then belong to the International Federation. And so, in fact, the way that initiatives come forward is from libraries and library staff working in individual countries. So the members of the committees are people who work in their local libraries and participate on a national level. So it is a mechanism by which anyone in any library in a country anywhere in the world can actually be participating in influencing an international treaty or influencing the direction that a project or an initiative takes. So we work probably very much like the internet,
Yes.
like ISAC.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, WIPO as a UN organization, of course, were composed by governments themselves. Yes. So, of course, always in contact with them, especially to update the legislation and to provide advice and to supplement information about copyright and also other intellectual properties. And regarding the Marrakesh specifically, we also involve the local blind associations or libraries that are dedicated to visually impaired people. So in 1 week from now, we're going to organize a workshop, for example, to explain the Marrakesh Treaty and also explain accessible format works and how can be exchanged. So we're bringing together both local governments and blind associations to discuss the Marrakesh Treaty and the whole issue of this accessibility to printed works.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions from the audience? We have about 10 minutes left. Anybody else, some great ideas that we didn't discuss yet as to good practices for facilitating access? Okay, one idea, that's great. There you go.
Well, maybe, I'm not from Europe, but just my organization and IFLA has developed a policy brief on public access because, I don't think this seems to be a problem in Europe, but in other parts of the world, public access is not taken seriously as a solution to access for all. And even in the internet governance community, and I don't know, you'll sometimes see themes such as connecting the next billion, but it's really an approach to access which primarily relies on mobile telephony and the mobile internet to connect more users. It's a very individual consumer approach. And so I think the public access discourse is an extremely important discourse, and it's good to see it here at EuroDIG, and I wish we can see more of it in the global IGF, because I think it brings together so many aspects of access, such as quality of access, access to content, access to access to services. But then just one reflection on the supply and demand and your comments about working with local government. A real challenge in many developing countries is that on the one hand, e-gov services is a really important role for public access. It's often a motivation for getting financing for public access facilities, because there can be facilities not just where people go to access the internet or information, they go there to interact with government services. But then that also has the risk of those public access facilities even the interaction, the relationship of public access being identified as a governmental service, and people then feel less free about how they use those services for their own information needs, maybe to express concern with what's happening with political participation and broader public participation. So I think that's often a fine balance, that it is important for governments to invest in public access, to make sure that there is supply of services such as e-gov services for people who usually don't have ways of access to governments, but also for those services, and I think there are libraries, they are actually really good at doing this, to maintain providing quality, independent, free spaces, safe spaces, where people can access e-gov services, but also, write letters, sign petitions, complain, and express themselves quite freely. So we find in developing countries that it's really a challenge to achieve that balance very often.
Yes, that's an excellent point. I think we're lucky in a way in the European Union that we don't have to be concerned about that all the time, at least in most countries. So, any further questions? I think we're all good. Would you like to have a last comment?
Yes, challenged by this comment. To be fair, in our experience that we had with this project, we had no issue like that, just the opposite. I mean, it's actually the government not concerned about people having access to that, but kind of not providing enough feedback, or not seeing enough feedback of what's done, and et cetera, et cetera. And e-government services is not just, filling blanks or whatever. It's exactly getting feedback also from the local community about what's available, what are the needs, what are the issues, et cetera, et cetera. So if it's the right local government, it will be in support of this, actually. But I don't know, I haven't sensed this as an issue. But you brought another thing that I start thinking, and we have not entertained this topic. It's about developing IT skills, which seems to be essential for equal access. And it's actually prerequisite to have access. Sometimes just training people in IT skills, it's demonstrating what they can do, how they can do the things, how effective they could be, et cetera, et cetera. And that brings incentive to them. And for countries like Bulgaria, access is not anymore a problem. You can always have at least mobile internet at affordable price, etc. And it's about, you're scared still by the computer and internet, and it's not just how to use Word, etc. You need new internet skills, you need new communication skills, you need new skills on how you can collect information, sort information, select information, etc., etc. in this ocean of information, etc. Those kinds of skills I'm talking about. And the people in those areas, they're afraid of the information they see and this flood of information. Even we are, cannot handle all this with. Right now we have two screens we cannot watch in the audience and us, and the laptop on in the knees. So IT skills, I think, is an important issue and an important allowance into the digital society. And it's become an issue. It's not just basic skills. It's more communication skills.
And I think also it's ICT skills. I mean, it's an issue at an EU level. It's all the time in the new digital agenda, in the top development priorities. And also I think it's important to separate the IT skills for normal users, which are more basic skills, but also then you need the highly skilled people who will, for example, you mentioned the German project, which is a community-led kind of independent. So you really need some people with technical skills who will be able to run this project. So you need two levels of skills, in fact. And also that goes back to community participation. So you need highly skilled people to make that happen, in fact. Anybody else in the panel, final comments?
What you were referring to, I talked about a lot more at this morning's session.
Yes.
That one of the roles of libraries has always been about access to information. And I think that for a lot of people, particularly in developing countries, they think of libraries as places to borrow print books and to learn how to use print books as a vehicle to learning. And what we are beginning to recognize more and more, particularly in developed countries, in the EU, in North America, that libraries are places to learn about accessing information no matter the vehicle that it's delivered in, so whether it's through a computer or through a book, and that libraries are an excellent place for people to come to learn how to use technology. And that support for using technology is critical so that we gain information and media literacy and we can make informed choices. So I see that as a really critical role for libraries and something that it would be great if we could have recognition for throughout the world.
Yes. Sebastian, Rafael, last words?
Well, in conclusion, on accessibility, we usually also hear from the World Blind Union that it's important to provide accessibility to that population has a visual impairment. So it is in fact an investment, as you said, to think about the business side. And for the government, it is an investment to provide access and conditions for visually impaired to actually attend a school, to provide works in accessible formats so they can follow the curriculum in a school, attend a university, graduate, and so be able to provide for themselves and not depend on government assistance. So provide accessibility to works to visually impaired is not only a human right or right to culture, and also right freedom of speech, because you need material in order to form your own speech, but it's also a good investment for the government and for the society.
Thank you.
Equal access for all, it's need to have the involvement of end user. We can't just wait for the government, for the local authority, or for others to do something. And my last word is get involved, end user, to all those issues, and you will be better in the future. Thank you.
Well, on that very perfect and pointly last note, I would like to close the session. Thank you very much, all the panelists, and to our loyal audience. So we hope that we're going to continue the discussion in the EuroDIGs going forward. Thank you very much.